Yeah, we are on recording mode. I'll share with you. Yeah, once again, I think most of you got it right. Please, when you want the CCEUs, I think one of the people who's not unmuted, there is a echo coming from there. So if you could all keep yourself muted for the time being. And when I invite Prasad, Prasad can come unmuted. There is an echo from one of your audio systems. My request is please go to again the Kocharia website, http://kocharia.com contact, and please give your particulars, and then the message just put the passwords as would be announced. And we're also uploading the recordings on YouTube on a unlisted basis. So that again, we'll open up a box in the website where you can sort of ask for those, and it will be sent on demand. I don't plan to sort of distribute it if you do not want it. And also, if you are all open to it, I'll open up a Kocharia Colloquium kind of a forum where we can share some of these things more easily. It'll be a separate, it doesn't necessarily have to be people who are members of Kocharia, but anyone who wants to gain by continuing professional development. So today's password, the first part is MCC. Second, I'll give it to you at the end of the session. I know that a couple of people left 2 minutes early. I do know that they left 2 minutes early, but unfortunately, I'm unable to give them the CCUs unless they give me the full password. So perhaps they can reach out to other people with whom they were in the session and get the password. That's about as best as I can be of help. Or when I will go through the registration, which I have a list, and I'll be sending people the recordings. You can re-listen to the recordings and then give me the password. So today's password starting is MCC. I just want to, it just occurred to me yesterday when we were talking about ethics. I really want to acknowledge two people who have done probably more for coaching in India than anyone else. Ajay and Leena Nangalia are probably the, not in that sense of age, I am older than them. They are probably the oldest, I would call them the parents of coaching in India. Both of them were coaches, PCC credential coaches before I got my PCC in 2011. And Ajay was, in a way, my guide. Amazing people, tremendous human beings. And Leena, of course, was the first MCC. I would really love to get her to speak in one of these webinars, but knowing her, she's so sort of private, it's impossible to get her to come onto any kind of a forum. So I mean, the reason why I wanted to talk about it was yesterday when I was listening to the various questions on ethics. To me, they embody the ethics of coaching. Not just an ICF code of ethics or any such code of ethics, but they are deeply spiritual. Of course, they are religious, but far more than that, extraordinarily religious, spiritual people. Tremendously helpful, and I don't know. I mean, it's always given me tremendous pleasure to interact with them. I deeply respect them. And another thing that came up to me was when we talk about ethics, I don't know how many of you know this, but the three biggest bodies of coaching in the world, the global bodies, International Coaching Federation, European Mentoring Coaching Council, and the Association of Coaching in UK, haven't been able to get together on one common code of ethics. EMCC and AC have a code of ethics. They call it the Global Coaching Ethics. And ICF, for whatever reason, has a separate code of ethics. It's sort of never the twain shall meet. I have no comments about why, whatever it is. I know some of the background. But the point is, when we talk about, yesterday some people were talking about it has to be universal and so on and so forth. Pardon my French, it's a lot of hogwash. If the three of the largest entities in coaching in the world cannot come together on an agreement as to what coaching is, so there is a lot more to it. I'm not saying it's easy. So it's not binary. It's not as if you can lay down a set of rules and say, hey, these are your ethics. In law, you can, but not in ethics and morality. There's a lot of personal issues. And my own experience is when we wax eloquent on personal ethics, the more eloquent you are, it's like the most corrupt people talk against corruption. And very often, in my own experience, it's sad. People who sort of wear the integrity on their sleeves, that integrity means something not quite what I would call integrity. For me, the code of ethics or any of that, and if you really go back to our scriptures, and this has been, I mean, whether you take Jesus or whether you take the Sufi religion or whether you take in later years Carl Rogers and people like that, they always believed in the ethics of the other person. In the Gita, it's always about the we rather than the me. And in our code of ethics, as it's called the dharma, and in yoga, in the Ashtanga Yoga, Patanjali describes the 5 components of what is called the yama, the global code of conduct, which is dharma. It's about ahimsa. The non-violence is probably the truest of all forms of ethics. And Buddha said that so beautifully in the Dhammapada. If you paraphrase that, basically what he said was, people talk about truth. There is no such thing as truth. All truth is relative. The only truth is that which does not harm the other person. And that's all there is to it. And if there is that one factor, if we all follow without sort of proudly announcing ourselves to be torchbearers of ethics and morality or whatever it is, but just care for the other person. And somebody yesterday 2 times mentioned about empathy. I agree with that. I would translate the empathy into something more, compassion. And that compassion, if we start having, I think that's more powerful than any code of ethics. If you have that compassion, automatically every other part of the code of ethics will follow, any code of ethics, whoever it is. So I just would like to leave it there. And we can have a session on this alone for discussing it. I'm sure many of you may or may not agree with me. That's not the point. But as I said, I wanted to exercise my privilege as a host today to say my 2 bits, whether people are in agreement with that or not. So at this point in time, I would like to welcome Prasad Deshpande. He is based in Pune. And at a later point in time, I would invite Dr. Paras to join us as well. They both trained with us at the MCCs as well. Prasad, I know, had his early training with Coach Yu. I remember his coming up with the manuals of Coach Yu.
Long time ago.
Long time ago. Yeah, I spent an evening with him, poring over those documents, and he's telling me how coaching should be done. Of course, we do coach training somewhat differently. Coach Yu, of course, is one of the most reputed world-class coaching institutions. There's no doubt about it. And I'm so happy to have them here. They've managed to get into the MCC status. I'm not saying it with any kind of this thing, but with far less struggle than I had to. Let me put it that way. So, obviously, we in some way did a better job of training them than we did ourselves. And so I would like them to be here to share their experiences as well. So what we would like to do is to do it on an interactive format. So I would just allow, basically what I briefed both Prasad and later when Paras comes in, is I would just be there to ask a few questions in pretty much coaching style. But essentially, what I would like them to tell you is about what are those competencies in coaching, given that this is ICF webinar and we are really focused on the core competencies. Where do they have their major challenge? And how did they overcome that? And what was that which was easier for them and what it was more difficult? And so it could be of relevance to those of you who are hoping to move on to the MCC journey. And I'm hoping that both you, Prasad, and later Paras, would inspire people towards a journey. Because one of the visions that I have is we have already graduated 5 people from Kocharya into MCC. And I'm hoping this year we would have another about 10. And essentially in India, whoever does that, just like when I started my journey in 2011, there were only three of us, Ajay and Leena first, and I the third. And today we have 400, out of whom about 320 Kocharya has trained. And we would like to have India probably one of the highest number of MCC coaches in the world. I think it's very, very possible. And that is really what we should aspire for, and make India the hub, a global hub, a global knowledge center for master coaches. We have the capability, we have the tradition, we have the culture, and all that we need to really have now is the inspiration and the motivation to move towards that. And as we speak, I know people here like Subhash who are pretty much there. All that they really need to do is to sort of work at preparing their recording and sending it across. I know many other people, I'm sure, are doing it in parallel. So the only hope today, the reason why I wanted to have this particular webinar with Prasad and Paras, and I invited Rajat. He was unfortunately busy. Yesterday he was here. He got tied up in something else. He couldn't come. So I leave it to you, Prasad. Let's see at the end of the day, if you find suddenly there's a huge spurt of people who are moving towards MCC, you've done a great job. Okay, all yours, Prasad. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Ram, for inviting me, and and it's great to see how far Kocharya has come since the days that we met 5 years ago in Bangalore when I first came and met you, as I said, with those 2 volumes of fast track coaching, manuals. It's really nice to see that. So one of the things I want to talk about is, when I talk about my journey, is basically what I've learned, and if I can share those insights with you, especially in some of those competencies, as well as in terms of some of the observations or insights that I have sort of captured along the way. I've made a few notes, which I thought I'd share with you, with people, Ram, along with some examples, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
To make things more, yeah.
All yours.
So, yeah, as I said, please ask me or tell me when to stop if I'm talking too much. But fundamentally, I started my very briefly, I attended my fast track workshop in Singapore in 2008. And as Ram said, it was a fantastic workshop, no doubt about it. It actually got me hooked into training, outstanding training. And then I moved forward. I, worked with Ram and for the PCC and the MCC. And I think, Ram, the turning point for me was the mentoring process that we had, which I would sort of also talk about. Sorry.
Somebody needs to be muted. I don't know who else is.
Yeah, sorry. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Right. So the best part of being a coach for me really is the opportunity to work on myself. It's been a journey of personal transformation. And for me, that's the biggest learning moving from along this journey. And something that I read many years ago sort of now resonates very strongly with me. One which Lewis Carroll has said, that one of the deep secrets of life is that all that is really worth doing is what we do for others. And I can really resonate with that right now, because that makes sense. And one of the challenges, or one of the reflections that I have, Ram, as we go forward, I know we have an audience which is, as you said, almost ready for the MCC. It's a very august audience, very learner audience. So therefore, I'm going to share what I have learned and offer that to the audience. And one of the observations I've learned in coaching over the years is that there's a pattern in coaching which I have observed. One is, there are 4 things that emerge in most coaching calls sometime or the other. First is, most people are beset with dilemmas. Okay, that's why they come to you. Dilemmas could be in different forms, but dilemmas are contradictions that people have. And as coaches, we can help them resolve those contradictions. It makes a big difference. Most importantly, helping them understand what those contradictions are. And that's where the coaching structure falls so beautifully in place. Because when we add value in terms of clarity. The second area which I've seen, which is critical, is in terms of designing actions. And I'll explain each one of them a little more briefly as we go forward. Designing actions for me was important because I never really paid attention to it. And I know how important it is, because coaching is really about helping people find the way and not providing them with solutions or advice or in any other form. And that's really the masterful way of coaching. The third area in terms of my learning is in terms of, it's not about the tools, and it's certainly not about the list of questions. Weaning away from a list of questions and weaning away from tools for me was a breakthrough, was a painful journey, because as a person who's fairly analytical, I love tools and I love lists of questions. But moving away from that was important. And when I say moving away from that, my biggest aha moment and my biggest challenge was recognizing that the best question was not the one that's most articulated or the one that's most, intellectual or looks very good, is the one that comes in the moment. Questions that come in the moment of listening are the most powerful questions. And more importantly, they're not questions, they aren't powerful questions. That term doesn't exist in my mind. They're questions which have power. And questions which have power are those questions which come in the moment. And for me, that's been a huge learning and something which I've been using fairly effectively going forward. And the fourth is recognizing it's a flexible structure. When I mean a flexible structure, coaching usually doesn't end in a call. And when I coach for executives at senior levels, and I coach at CEOs, very senior levels, as well as middle management teams, the time frame of 12 to 16 calls or sessions that we have, that itself is one big structure. And the theme that flows throughout, the way we handle it from one end to the other as a coaching call, is important. Okay, and recognizing that is critical in terms of managing the coaching process. For me, that was that's a learning which I'm continuously seeing as we go forward. So if you come back to dilemmas, why are dilemmas so important? I think that's one of the breakthroughs that I've got in terms of resolving dilemmas is the fact that the coaches need to understand that, because it's about, in a sense, living a coherent life. And one of the things that I've learned over the years is that the dilemmas have three components. One is who you are as a person, what you believe, and what you are doing. If all three are in alignment, then things are fine. But if one of these are out of sync, then people have dilemmas. And the coaching structure or the coaching agreement is a starting point of helping resolve those dilemmas. Anything around from your side, please? I can continue. I just want to know how we go.
Yeah, there is, I think, Narayanan, he had a question. Let me unmute him.
Okay.
Narayan?
Thank you, Ram. Thank you for the opportunity. And hello, Prasad.
Hey, hi, Narayan. How can I help?
You mentioned, when we talk about this questions, you mentioned right, with the moment. Yeah. And with the moment would mean that what it actually means in very prosaic terms is going into a coaching session with an open mind and try to listen, try to be there. We talked about presence, be with the client. Yeah. We talk about all these things, but I'm still in the corporate world, so I've just started the journey. So forgive me if it is too much of a novice question.
There are no novice questions.
How can you, to rely on an instinct and to rely too much on the moment, may find myself or oneself at the end of a coaching session as having drawn a null set or nothing at all, nothing really. Yeah. You didn't get the moment at all. So what does it mean to the entire experience?
Right. No, when I say that, I'm not saying that you can't discount the training that you need to put in. You have to go through that. There's a training in asking questions. There is a list of questions that you go through. There are a few set of questions that you all practice, and that's an important part of the journey to go through. I'm not discounting that at all. Okay, but as you do that, okay, as you move as you become more sure-footed about yourself, okay, that's when you become more in the moment. It's about being more sure-footed, okay, and it's worrying less about what the other person might think about your question.
Prasad, if I can button for a moment, This is usually a question very often people who are in the beginning of their journey, they ask, and it's a very relevant question. There was a person who came to me recently who was attending one of the classes with one of my associates and said, I've attended 4 sessions, 4 days, and I still don't know how to ask powerful questions. And I loved it when Prasad said, there are no such things as powerful questions. There are only questions that are powerful. And Narayan, you said about instinct. First of all, I think we need to differentiate between instinct and intuition. There's a huge, huge, huge difference.
Sorry.
I presume that you meant intuition.
I meant intuition. Actually, I meant quoting and I picked the wrong word.
That's
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Fair enough. No, because that will be interesting for other people as well, because very often we use these terms so interchangeably without understanding that instinct is pretty much, it's important, but instinct is about an animal behavior. You're just reacting to something. That is what is instinct. Intuition is something far greater when the mind is absolutely still. Like Prasad said, it takes a while. It's a journey, which as you move from the ACC to PCC and then finally to the mastery, at that point in time, suddenly the moment comes where you find that, if you are a photographer, the analogy I would use is your depth of field is so high, the aperture is so low, that all that it occupies is just the person in front. The rest of it is all blurred. Okay. So now, if you're able to do that, that is when you become in the moment and you stop the thoughts that are going in within you. And I think that is what Prasad was alluding to. So in a way,
it's also Narayan about enjoying coaching. Okay, that's another big learning for me. If you have to enjoy it. You have to enjoy being with people. You must enjoy helping, because remember, every time we coach, we learn a lot. Okay, so the humility with which we go into a call, saying that I'm going to learn something today from this person. Okay, therefore, can I put myself aside and be there with him? Makes a difference. Okay. And these are not just words. I sincerely mean it. And you'll see that the other person warming up to you in many subtle and different ways. Okay. With the trust and intimacy that we talk about as a competency starts coming in. It's all interconnected, right? When there's trust in his intimacy, he's more willing to consider your question and your question that you offer, which makes a difference to him. Does that answer your question, Narayan? Thank you. Yeah. Any other questions?
Vishy, he's always the scholar. Let me try and get all of
it's wonderful to it's wonderful to see him on call.
he has quoted from the Book of Five Rings.
Miyamoto's.
Yeah, Vishy.
I don't have anything to say. I just quoted it for Kitty's benefit.
That is amazingly Zen-like. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah. So if I can move on, okay. I'm going to share an example of a person called D, just to set the context of the coaching. And then share another insight that I hope might be useful for the audience. For example, in coaching, I think it's important to pay attention to who the person really is. One of the persons I was coaching was a mutual fund manager, a top star, okay, who was introvert, very skeptical, late 40s, so he felt time was running out on him. Fortunately, his wife was supportive. He had a clear set of principles which defined his inner world. That's important to recognize, which means that he's extremely articulate inside him. Very few people are. He knew who he was. Perfectionist at work and very skeptical. So he was, for me, when I started coaching him, this was probably the first call and only call that he would judge and see whether it's of value. Others, he'd go back to his boss and say, "You're wasting my time." Okay. So when we started the coaching process with D as a person, if you look at the coaching structure, the coaching agreement probably is one of the most powerful ways of focusing on how to address some of these issues. And for me, it's extremely useful, because one of the things I've learned along the way is why the coaching agreement is so important. The coaching agreement is important because it helps resolve contradictions that people have. And as a coach, what is my job? My job as a coach is to help articulate the contradictions that people have. And they do have it. And if you can bring that to the fore in the conversation, I think you're doing a job in coming out with breakthrough coaching. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Okay? Because one of the challenges that he had, D, was the fact that he was very clear that he had an identity as a perfectionist, but he also had a strong need to be seen as a team player. Now, while I'm saying this doesn't come out so nicely with him. It took about a fair amount of time in the coaching call for us to bring this contradiction, surface this contradiction, and bring it to the table and say, okay, so you want to be a perfectionist, you also want to be a team player. So how do you want to take this forward? Now, this for him was an aha moment. It's not aha, it doesn't matter if it's an aha moment for us. As coaches, we've got to go beyond looking for aha moments for ourselves. Are we helping the client understand what things are? Okay. And when he saw this, I said, then the question that we're talking about, for example, just falls into place. How are you willing to resolve this? What are you going to do about this? That's it, right? And of course, the whole coaching went on. But that's one example of a dilemma, okay? And interestingly, throughout the coaching, just to share why dilemmas are important, D had 4 clear dilemmas that came out in the whole coaching process. One was, the balance between work and life is a dilemma. Making money for the greater good. Interestingly enough, D had a very strong social side to him, which most mutual fund managers don't have. Individual perfection versus mediocrity in the team. Organization versus self. There could be many more, but for D, these were 3 or 4. And our ability to surface these in different coaching sessions and resolve them adds value to the coach. That's why the structure is very critical. Therefore, when you look at the structure, coaching agreement, discovery, summary, designing actions, accountability, all these things flow very nicely and add a lot of power in the whole coaching process. Ram, up to you. Over to you if there's any questions or anything else.
Let me unmute myself. Absolutely, Prasad, I completely agree with you. Now, Paras, at this stage, do you have any additional comments to offer?
No, I think Ram, Prasad has taken up really well, and I would love to, check it out with the group as a whole. If anybody has any question.
Okay. Yeah. Please continue, Prasad.
Okay, wonderful. So, as a part of since the title of this session really is my journey as an MCC and my journey as well. One of the things that I used to do was I used to be very quick to close the call because the half an hour or 40 minutes used to weigh on me. One of the things which I don't do now is the last thing I look at is the time. Okay, I focus on the discovery process far more, and I've noticed that whenever I do that, it automatically falls in place. I don't overshoot. I mean, if it's 40 minutes, it's 40 minutes. And the reason for this is that because if you do a good job in the agreement and the discovery process, and you focus on designing actions, the client takes the reins of the coaching in his hands, and he actually starts converging and making the call meaningful for him. So you don't have to do all of that. And so therefore, that's one of the more interesting, learnings that I've got as we go forward. And another aspect which I thought I would share with people is about designing actions. I never used to spend enough time, I think, in designing actions. And one of the things I've learned is that you can design actions at any point of time in the call. You don't have to wait till the end. It's ridiculous to wait for the end. If there's a breakthrough and there's a moment that comes up in the coaching call, stop, ask the client, what are you going to do, and design the actions. Everything about the duration of the call beyond a point is artificial. What's important is the breakthroughs that we get for our clients. And that actually works a lot.
Yeah, sorry, Prasad. I unmute. Oh, okay. I unmuted two people, Sunita and the other person is, I think, Sheila.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, I think they had questions. I think one of their audios is in a bad shape. So I don't know who's this in a bad shape. Yeah. So Sheila, if you would like to ask your question, you said about something about venting emotions, content and context. Prasad might be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Ram.
Yeah. Hi, Sunita. Hi, Sunita. Tell me. I can't hear you. That's it.
Yeah, I'm Sheila here. Hi.
Hi, Sheila. How are you?
My question is that when I am with the client, they just want to speak about the content and they just want to vent out. And as a coach, we are not supposed to go into the content, but we have to comfort them because unless they went out, they are not comfortable. So how do we comfort them?
Very interesting question, and I'm sure we've all been through this. Okay, when we patiently listen to this, one of the ways that I would probably, sort of manage this or handle this at times is to make an observation. Okay, observations in direct communication, which is the ICF competency, is a very powerful competency which we don't use often enough. Okay, a direct observation is as good as a good question. In fact, sometimes better. Okay, so you can see I hear there's a lot going on there. So state your observation if you see that things are being, that the person is or the client is talking too much, or is really obsessed about something beyond a point. Say it nicely. This seems to bother you a lot. I can see that, right? And your energy is there. So would you want to tell us more of what's happening here? And that sort of stops everything, because it stops him on the tracks, because he says, something, and that, that moment when the silence comes in and the client stops, that's, when you made an impact with your question, you can make the same impact with the observation. Okay. Yes. Now the skill is articulating the observation. That's important. Okay. You say something which is not right and it could go the other way. But usually if you're paying attention and you're listening, you get the right words. Okay. And the tone of the voice is also very critical. Yeah. That's gentle.
Sheila, Prasad, let me just add something to this. It's a very interesting question. The answer is actually in what you said itself. The coach is not supposed to go into content. ICF or nobody can regulate that the client cannot go into content. Let's be very clear about it. Okay. So if you read Carl Rogers, who I advise every one of you at whatever level, please read that book, which he circulated to everybody the other day on becoming a person. That's what it is about. If the client wants to vent, the client vents, period. And of course, it's a problem if you're sitting in an MCC assessment for 1 hour, during which time you are at tremendous sort of pressure to finish your conversation. But if you're not, in a regular conversation, allow that person to vent. That's what the person has come to you for. Absolutely. And that's what the person is paying you for. So you've got to be extremely careful. I agree with Prasad. Yes, you can make some observations, but you need to be, this is one of the things we are trying to impart to MCC coaches. How do you express your negative impressions that is coming up with you in direct communication in a very appropriate way to the client so he can benefit?
That is critical, Ram, and that is actually the most important part of the whole process.
That's extremely difficult. Yeah. And if you're able to, and it takes practice. And probably you have to practice with a group of people who would advise you, hey, is it doing good for you or whatever. On a lighter note, those of you who may be familiar with NLP, if you read Richard Bandler in Structure of Magic, and he talks about, there's a portion of it, he's coaching somebody, and he asks the person, a lady who's sitting in the client's chair, tell me a little bit about, tell me what you're feeling about this particular incident that happened to you. And then she starts going into the drama. And so Richard Bandler, being Richard Bandler, he says, shut up. I don't want to hear a word more. So now you tell me, just when you are sitting here, what is it that is going through your mind? I don't want to hear it. But Bandra can get away with it. That is NLP coaching. But if you try it in an MCC assessment or a PCC assessment or even ACC, of course, you will miserably fail. That's not the way that coaching is to be done. So there are people, there's some guy who came once when I was running the Association of Coaches who spoke on something to do with challenging coaching or whatever it is. And this was this kind of an approach. And it was painful because that's fine. It may work under when you are actually in a dangal kind of a environment. When you're wrestling with somebody, you can use that kind of an approach, but not in a approach. But I agree with Prasad. The key thing is, I would personally, in a conversation, unless it is an assessment conversation, which every day you're not going to have, where my personal advice to you is, contrary to whoever gurus may tell you, always have a client who's trained as a coach to have a assessment conversation, whether it's PCC or MCC. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Okay, because they at least understand the basic configuration of what it is. And ICF itself, in a way, implies that, because it says that for any of these conversations, it should be a regular client who has worked with you and you understand that person well and the person understands the structure. And the second is to understand how you can articulate your negative feeling. Now I'll unmute Sunita and I'll mute you, Sheila.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Hi, good evening, Ram and Prasad. My question in short, thank you. My question in short is to understand, what has helped you in developing your intuitive ability or just being yourself in the moment when you're on the coaching call?
Sunita, would you like me to answer?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, any of you, I'd like to actually hear from both of you.
Yeah, Prasad.
Okay, so I'll go ahead. I think what's helped me, and it's a great question, I think, because it's a question that I think we all struggle with, and I'm very happy that you asked such a simple but powerful question. It's not easy to be who you are with the especially if it's a paid client and you have to add a lot of value to that person. But the simple thing is to recognize is that you're not here to provide any expertise. You're not here to actually give any great advice. You're simply here to be there for that person. And the best way to be there for the person is to be who you are. And when you get that, and when you recognize the fact that people like you for who you are, it's important for coaches to be liked. As a person and as an individual, it sort of motivates you to become who you are. You don't have to be anybody else, seriously. And that's a fun part about coaching, is that once you get the fact that you don't have to be the expert or you're the sage or however successful you've been in your previous life, you just have to be who you are as a person. To my mind, that makes a difference. And I see the other, personally what I do is I just see the other person as whoever it is. You smile and you talk and just as you do it with anybody else. The only thing that you're doing is you're having a structured conversation. That's all. The structure is your strength. And you can hold on to it as you become natural, as you go forward. Yeah, Sunita?
Yeah, Sunita, just to add to, sorry, we lost you, Sunita. Oh, okay.
Sunita,
no. Thank you so much.
Sorry, Sunita, was that okay for you, or I'm just?
Yeah, it was. It was what was on my mind, and I wanted to really hear what you had to say. And I'm so happy that I'm on the right track.
Wonderful. Just continue doing that.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, Prasad. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
No,
Any other questions?
Yeah. At the moment, there isn't a question. Let me add something which is on a slightly higher, lighter note, because it's best to break down the seriousness of people wanting to be completely in the moment and all that stuff, which doesn't come naturally to any of us, actually. When I first started my coaching journey, which was totally accidental, I was at crossroads after a bit of a personal trauma. And a friend of mine advised me, yeah, why don't you take up coaching? And I didn't know a damn thing about coaching. I asked, I said, I don't play football or cricket. So what kind of a coach will I be? That was my understanding of what coaching was. This is not very long ago, 6 years ago. And the person, no, laughed, and this is what you do. You have done all this, etc. And then I came to my wife and told her, yeah, you know, this person, she knew him well. He suggested I be a coach. So she said, you've done so many stupid things in your life. So you want to be a coach now. So do you know even what it takes to be a coach? I said, okay. That was when I met with Ajay Nagalia, talked to him. And I also went into the ICW website. It said listening, etc., etc. So I told her, yeah, it says active listening, whatever that meant. I didn't know what the heck it meant anyway. So she said, you don't even listen to me. How are you going to listen to people? So that's when I decided seriously to go and train myself. And the coaching training, as it so happened, was almost like a spiritual experience for me. I don't think that was one of the best trainings that in coaching available today, but even that, what it was tremendously powerful. Yes, I'm a meditator by training. I teach meditation. Did it really help me? I'm not sure. What helps is what I again come back into this client centricity. If your client fills your vision at the time that when you are coaching, when you are in the coach's chair and the person is in the client's chair, then you don't need anything else. That is all that needs to happen. And you have to get into that space. And that is true client congruence. That is unconditional positive regard. That is client centricity. That is empathy. And that understanding, it comes with a little bit of practice. So in very simple terms, I would define coaching a starting point, which Prasad already covered, that we need to be very clear of what the outcome the client wants, be it resolution of a dilemma, whatever else it may be. Sometimes it may be a dilemma. Sometimes it may not be. And very often we get into trying to figure out the two horns of the dilemma, which is better. That is not the purpose of a coach. It's for the client to decide. You cannot ask a question, okay, what option do you prefer? What are the rights and wrongs? Very often there's a third truth, which is a combination of those two, which might be best for the client. You need to be aware of that as well. And the second factor that Prasad mentioned is the end point, which is the action, which, especially if you come from a counseling background, it's not necessarily very important. But in coaching, that is very important because the action and the outcome are the two ends of that spectrum. But in between, there are two extraordinarily powerful processes which make coaching for what coaching is. The goal clarification or agreement and action, to me, they are both automatic once you started practicing for a while. And those of you who are preparing for either PCC or MCC, I would request you to spend at least half of your recording time. The sweet spot is about 45 minutes, at least about 20 minutes on agreement. Get that, go through the PCC markers and get them straight. And if you get them absolutely on the dot, you would probably don't have to do anything else. Automatically, the process will take care. The two important factors in between the process, which for most people who are working towards their mastery, which often is a challenge, and it was for me, is one, presence, and the other is active listening. The present is about treating the client with such respect that nothing else exists there except the client, the unconditional positive regard. ICF, of course, calls it partnership. It's a lot more than partnership. It's a deep respect for who the client is. And Prasad mentioned this, who the client is, that is important. It's not about the drama around the client. It's not about the situation. It's not about the what of the external, but what's going on here in between the minds of the client. If you can get to that state, that is when you are truly in that present mode. And the second is active listening. If you can get a presence and active listening in place, I think, Sunita, what you are talking about here, it's meditation. That is all that happens at that point in time. Okay. Yeah, Prasad.
Yeah, while I was listening to Ram, especially about the fact that, about this, how serious coaching is. Actually, one of the things that I think are really, really important is being light as a coach. Okay? Can you bring lightness into the coaching? It's not about being, the client may be serious, but if you're light with him, not in a very, I'm not saying being disrespectful, but when you're light with the person, humorous without, you don't have to crack jokes, but pleasant and light, it just eases the client a lot. It makes it fun. You smile, it's interesting. The person loosens up and he talks to you, and you can have some great serious coaching when you're light. Now, developing lightness is like a chef. The best cakes and souffles are made when you have light. And that's a metaphor I would use when it comes to coaching. And so therefore, based on who you are, your personality and the way it is, everyone can be light. Remember, in my view, you're not the client's friend. If you had a friend, you'd go to it. You're not a friend, but you can be very friendly, okay? Because friends finally give advice, and friends are biased. We're not friends, we're impartial. We're the sounding boards for them. We challenge them, even if nicely. And when you keep things light, you can challenge a person very strongly, so that the person actually, sometimes the client needs it, because otherwise, if you don't challenge them, you're not doing your job. So that sense and that ability to do that I think is important, and all of us have that ability. We just need to find it. What makes us light in the moment. Over to you, Ram.
No, Prasad, I just have a question for you. I mean, Mohan had asked a question about frivolous. No, yeah. What Prasad means is not frivolous, Mohan.
It's not frivolous, not at all.
You can use humor.
Yes.
First of all, let me put it this way, again, somewhat lightly, if you can get the meaning of it, is that coaching is not a life and death business. I don't know of any client who died on the client's chair or a coach who dies on the coach's chair.
It's not.
Don't take it as a life and death issue. Work with a client. The client comes to you frustrated, difficult, and disempowered, as Prasad said. So make the client, and Einstein beautifully said, you can never find a solution to the problem at the level of consciousness at which the problem arose. So what you're really trying to do is to raise the level of consciousness of that person. And by being more serious, you're not going to. By what Prasad
exactly.
said, lightness, humor, the camaraderie, in a sense, but not as he said, a friend. If you're able to get that, that is what happens. Anyway, Prasad, the question that I had for you, really, what would interest people here? What are the challenges that you face? In which of these areas now that you described that you had the maximum challenge, and what you had to do to overcome that?
Okay. I think the biggest challenge that I had, and my biggest challenge that I really had, was being a natural coach. When I say a natural coach, I was very focused on asking questions which were very, which were brilliant questions, or questions which were, which would excite the client, okay, and which make a breakthrough. For me, my biggest change and my biggest difficulty was moving away from that, moving away and actually trusting myself to coach without a safety net below. Many of these lists of questions are safety nets for us. We know that if I miss this, I have something else to go back to. Swinging the trapeze without the safety net, which means that trusting yourself was the toughest part for me. Okay, I'm still learning about to do that, but trusting yourself to ask that question, to take a risk, to challenge, was something that I found extremely difficult. Okay, and once I did that, it sort of freed you. It actually, the look of awareness that came in the client's eyes when he looked at you and stopped and started pondering over the question that you asked or the observation that you made, for me, it was the aha moment. Okay, this is really, and of course, listening is not so much, but these are the areas which I find it important, and I'm still struggling with it. But being more natural for me has given me immense joy, because I don't.
Hello. Yeah, we lost Prasad for a brief moment. I hope. Okay, I presume he will come back.
Hello? Hello?
Prasad, were you able to continue? Because there was a problem at my end.
Yeah, I did. Did everybody hear? Sorry? Did you hear?
Subhash?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
It's going fine.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So essentially, I was saying around that, how to hold the client accountable was something that I'm learning now, which I never used to do enough. It was a big challenge for me because I never knew how to hold the client accountable, honestly. For me, I just went to coach, but now I recognize that it's really important to hold him accountable or her accountable to make a difference. That's a challenge which I'm overcoming over a period of time.
So would you like to tell them as to how you are holding the client accountable, Prasad?
Okay. One is in a continuous sessions, for example, when they come in, if there is work that they've said that they would do and they come in, I usually spend a little moment on that. But I don't hold them accountable like school children are holding them accountable. I tell them, you missed an opportunity over here with a smile, right? What do you think could have happened had you done it? So it's really important for them to recognize that they've missed out, okay, without making them feel bad about it. Okay, and then we continue. It's always with a smile, right? And then another thing which I do, which I find very useful, is that sometimes I have a coaching call for 40 minutes, and I tell them, this is the coach. We're getting into the intense coaching call, and I complete that, and after that, I have a chat with them. Okay, on what do you think are the big learnings over here, which may not necessarily be traditional ICF coaching, but that post-coaching conversation adds a lot of value to them in many different ways. Okay, that's one area. But in the call, I hold them accountable by asking them straight away upfront, when you said you would do this and it's not happening, what was happening here? What couldn't you take this forward? And usually, and it's just not the voice, it's the body language and everything, right? And the other area which I think is very important in holding coaches accountable is your own client management. I'm never late. I always meet my commitments when it comes to the client. It's critical. Okay, they're observing you all the time, and we have to hold an example. So if I say I'm going to send you some reading material, that it goes on that day, right? If the call is at 3 o'clock, I'm fine. Or coaching call, if it's a person-to-person call, I'm always on time. I'm always there. You can't slip up in any of these things if you want to build credibility with the client. Okay? Lightness of being means that the client sees you as very serious in every aspect of it. And when you hold yourself accountable to what you've told the client starts holding himself accountable to himself, and that's critical. I wonder how many of us actually pay attention to the way we manage our clients and ourselves with the client. We're always on display. And that's critical. No doubt about it. We're professionals, and we have to demonstrate how professional we are as coaches as well. Yes, Ram.
Brilliant, Prasad. So pretty much the last question, and then perhaps after that, Paras can come in. I've already posted the password. The second half of the password is Prasad. First is MCC. Now, Prasad, the question I have is, if you were to provide, let's say, just 3, for want of a better word, tips for those who are trying to prepare for their MCC on the journey or make the master coaches, what would they be?
Okay. The first step would be to, like you said, is to spend time on the coaching agreement. Be comfortable with stretching it to 15, 20 minutes. It doesn't matter. Okay. That's important. That's my first tip. Spend time in the discovery and the exploration process. Enjoy it. Because you'll find that the real value really comes over there. That's one thing. The second is practice for an MCC level. Practice direct communication. It makes a big difference. No questions about it in the call. The feedback that I've received from my ICF assessors I think the direct communication was the one that scored the highest, actually, marks. And that actually made me understand that this is something I've been neglecting for so long. It makes a big difference. And the third is designing actions. It's critical, okay? You've got to pay attention to that point of time in the coaching call when the client is ready. Don't continue the call because there's a structure. Stop there and say, great, now what would you do? That's all. It works. And you get full marks for that because that's what they want from you. 3 things, Rob. Yeah.
Brilliant. Actually, the direct communication is very important. By the Indian ethos, many of us are very uncomfortable asking direct questions or direct communication. We really do not like to be, even in the slightest way, disrespectful. You are not being disrespectful when you respectfully point out to the client that, look, this is something that you say which is not in congruence what you said earlier. So Paras, now, if you were to come up with your 3 tips, what would they be?
Okay, so for me, the whole, when it comes to a journey rather than MCC or PCC or ACC, I believe a lot of coaching presence one needs to be with. And also with creating awareness. I think the first thing that I like to look at is being in the space of self-reflectiveness. How much am I learning from the process? How much am I resonating with what the client is talking? Because my whole journey was all about creating awareness for myself first rather than I could do it for my clients. So for me, coaching presence, listening and creating awareness, they hold a lot of value as a whole. So that's something which comes to me in this space right now to discuss with everybody. Yeah.
Thanks, Paras. Very quickly, there were a couple of questions here. I found them very interesting. Somebody asked, what did Prasad mean by spend time on coaching agreement? Exactly what he said. If it's a conversation about 45 minutes, this is mainly for people who are preparing for assessments. Spend maybe 20 minutes. Don't get worked up about it. Spend time in that. That will save you time in the remaining part of the exploration. And somebody is talking about this coach I know. I hosted her once about, says that assuming the coach isn't drunk during the call. Certainly you do not expect the coach to be drunk during the call or any sense taking it frivolously. I don't know. There are a lot of these kind of things trying to combine wellness and holistic kind of a thing and whatever. You need to be a vegetarian and a teetotaler to be a good coach. I don't know. I don't want to use any French out here, but so it's the highest BS that I have heard in those kind of things. Okay. So when I started becoming a coach, there was a time I stopped being a vegetarian for several years, for decades. And being a teetotaler, I started drinking and eating meat. Now I eat everything that moves. So probably whether it helped me in my coaching or reduced my coaching capabilities, I do not know. Prasad, you might like to comment on that. Whether part of your, I know Paras is, I checked with him today because he is coming and we are having dinner together. He said, I am a teetotaler. I don't eat meat.
No, I love Scotch. I love single malt.
You are my Prasad. You are my man. Come over. We'll have a drink together. But we wouldn't like to go coaching after that. But that's different.
No, we won't.
Okay, guys. We are at 7:30. You have the passwords, and for those of you, Karen, you asked, go to the Coach Area contact page. Fill in your detail. There's a message box at the bottom. They just provide the password. That's simple. That's about all. Okay, thanks a lot. Thank you very much indeed. And we'll be posting the recordings tomorrow at 6:30 the same time. It's Kristen from Germany. She is joining us. She is an MCC coach. She's talking about solution-focused coaching. Very, very interesting subject. Thanks. Okay. Thanks all of you. Thank you very much, Prasad. Thank you very much, Paras, for being there. Subhash and Pramod.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank
Wonderful
you, Ram.
session.
Thank you, everybody.
Could you just repeat that password? I just missed it.
It is MCC Prasad.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.